All right, we're back. We've got week 4 review. College football, Mike and Rico. We got a lot to talk about. We'll go ahead and take our little intro song off because we got a lot to get into. A lot of stuff is shaking out of the wash here. Uh, what's your overall so far? I mean, to me, I love this season. I've got a Texas hat on. I'm a Nole, but I'm giving respect. I'm just gonna just spoiler alert. I think Texas right now is the best team in the country, and there's a couple reasons for that. I'm here in the state of Texas. People are excited. They haven't had a lot to be excited about for this university in a long time. So I'm just giving respect in wearing this. I love the fact that Michigan, Ohio State, Texas, Florida State. I mean, I would say Notre Dame, but Notre Dame doesn't like to put 11 players on the field. They could have been in this conversation, kind of making my preseason prediction a little messed up. But even Miami's doing well. I mean, the Gators had a nice win last week. It's like your powerhouses are kind of coming back into the fold. It's not so much just SEC centric, where just some of these teams that are gobbling up the recruits are being successful now. It's a lot of these major power programs with these big powerful backings. How can I forget Penn State? Penn State with a huge 31-0 win over Iowa. I mean, Penn State looks like a monster. I mean, Michigan better pack a lunch when they come into there later on this year. I love the fact that some of these big boys. I mean, I've got buddies that are fans of these different teams, and these guys are genuinely excited. Like my Penn State folks, they're jacked up. Ohio State folks are jacked up. My Texas people, they're jacked up. Miami guys, they're jacked up. Gators are jacked up. Noles, we're damn sure jacked up. Wolverines, damn sure jacked. You know what I mean? So I love the fact that this season has it all so far. And I'd be remiss to not mention in the intro, holy Pac-12. I mean, we've got some contenders out there. SC, Oregon, we're going to talk about that ass whooping they put on Colorado. We're going to get into that because we're going to get into that. But I love the fact this season's got it all, and I also love the fact that Colorado's out there. They're a huge buzz, big draw, most watched team in college football. I think it's great. This season has really just it's not so much a homerism because the teams that I like are doing well. It's just I feel like the culture of college football right now is in a really good spot.
Yeah, there's a lot of great college football. I mean, this is what I call like almost like statement Saturday. And when I say statement, I don't mean like you have to go in there and kill people. It's statement Saturday is, and hey, this is what we are. This is who we are. And Penn State showed that. Florida State showed that. Ohio State showed that. These teams showed that in marquee games. I think even Utah showed that. Had a big win over UCLA.
Yes.
So I think a lot of these teams, it was kind of a statement Saturday for me, but it's just so much fun. Even with the Dion stuff with Colorado, it's a lot of fun because it brings more attention to the game, and I think it's awesome what he's done in getting kids to believe in what he's doing. Obviously, I don't like I'm not agree with the antics, but I think it's great for college football to have this part in college football, but just to have all these games that it's not like and now you don't have like the general powers that are usually the top of the mountain like used to be like Clemson, Alabama, Georgia. We've even seen some chinks in what they're doing as far as Georgia.
Yeah.
We've already seen that with Alabama early in the year. So I think it's great for college football that we're seeing now new teams kind of rise to the occasion, build up their culture, what their team is, and really taking their programs to another level. Washington team, I love that freaking team. I think that team's one of the best teams in the country. I love Washington. But I just think there's so many college football. It doesn't matter where you live or what fan base or what you're at, whether it's Texas, Michigan, Washington, Florida State, whoever your team is, Georgia. It's that there's a lot to be excited about because there's so much of an unknown of, well, who is the best? And
Yeah.
I think it's gonna get funner because as we go into these matchups each week. But I think this weekend was one of the funnest I had, not just because FSU won a big rivalry game of against Clemson, but it was just the magnitude of all the other games that were going on. Where it's Oregon showing what they are, Washington showing what they are, Utah, as I mentioned, showing they are, Iowa State with the biggest win with them beating the top 10 team on the road at Notre Dame, which is a extremely tough place to play. I think the takeaway is just Get buckled in for the roller coaster or the ride, guys. This is going to be fun, and this is probably the most fun I've had, covering college football in a long time because of the diversity of all the teams around the country. It's not just a set few of teams. Like, okay, these are the teams. Everyone else don't matter. It's like now you have so many top tier teams everywhere around the country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, right now, college football, it's crazy because I'm not a fan of the NIL, just straight paying kids. I've always thought that a stipend program, 401k program, I've always thought that that would be very fair. If you're sweet enough to where they're selling your jersey and you're making the university money, cool. Like if you're that dude like that and you're literally putting butts in seats, then cool. But I'm not a big NIL guy. I've been pretty outspoken on that, but I have to say the changes in the NIL, there is a counter effect that has occurred. And what it is now, I'm not going to throw accusations out there and do that. That's not what we're going to do in this program. But there were certain programs who were able to get recruits more so than other schools. Okay. Now that everybody has the same propensity to get the recruits and it's out in the open, now all of a sudden things are changing. Now all of a sudden Michigan's not getting their butt kicked at the end of the year in November anymore. Now all of a sudden Florida State's able to go into Memorial State and get wins now. Now all of a sudden you've got some teams out west that are competing. Notre Dame looks decent. So I do like what the NIL has done in that respect. It has kind of leveled the playing field, and these big boys with the big backing and the followings, they're back in the fold now. Texas is back in the fold now, and it was bound to happen. And I think that's why some of these coaches opposed NIL, and some of them have been very, very outspoken. Your Nick Sabans, your Dabo Sweeneys, even some of the stuff coming from Ohio State. Yeah, because the monopoly's over now. Now everybody can come out there and they can offer certain things to student athletes. Regardless of my opinion on it, the cap's taken off now. And now it's transparent. It's out in the open now. And everybody's eating. And the big schools with the big followings with a lot of the logistics, now they're back into the fold. And that's what you're seeing. You're seeing it across the country. So I do like that aspect. And if we want to start running down some of these scores, we got some good ones. We're going to blow through the back end of this top 25. Florida 22-7 over Charlotte. That wasn't a good performance. Coming off of a good performance against Tennessee at home, in which they won, where they always beat Tennessee in the swamp. This was kind of a go through the motions game. Not going to indict them. They just seemed to kind of walk through the motions. I know that there was a lot of grumblings in the swamp there. They've got a big one on the road next week against Kentucky. They better buckle up and get ready for that because that didn't look good. But they got the win. They're sitting at 3-1. Tennessee gets a win over UTSA, 45-14. Milton looked pretty good. Had a long touchdown run there. Again, it's tough. It's kind of like it's like a consolation, right? They lost the big one last week to Florida, so they look to right the ship. There'll be some bigger games down the road for Tennessee to get going. Miami, 41-7 over Temple on the road. Not much to say there. Miami's got a pretty good team. They look pretty good, and they're not playing good competition. They got a very good win at home against Texas A&M. Outside of that, it has been truly, truly abysmal, poor competition. They've got a game at Carolina coming up here in a few weeks. That's going to show what they've got. Duke 41-7 over UConn. Duke looks pretty impressive. Of course, they kicked Clemson's butt a couple weeks ago, and that's a big win for them. They're going to be in Tallahassee in, I think, 3 weeks from now. We're going to see what they've got. But before then, they've actually got another game. Do they play – who does Duke have coming up? They've got Notre Dame, don't they?
They got Notre Dame next weekend. Game day is actually going to be there.
Wow.
Game day
Okay.
in
We're going to see what we need to see about Duke next week then. They're going to get tested. North Carolina goes over Pitt. Pitt's really struggling. Going into the year, I looked at Pitt and I was like, that might be a team to really give FSU trouble because it's on the road. Pitt has not been the same Pitt. I mean, Kenny Pickett was just playing on Sunday night, carving up the Raider defense, and they miss him. They wish he had more eligibility because Pitt's not the same Pitt.
Right.
But North Carolina does have Drake May. They go in there and they smoke them out 41-24. North Carolina looks dangerous. They had that scary game against App State, but they've got a monster game with Miami. We're going to find out everything we need to know about those two. North Carolina did have a big win neutral site over South Carolina to start the year. Another another notch for the ACC over the SEC. We're going to get into that. SEC folks, you might want to cover your ears because the SEC ain't SEC-ing. We're going to get into that. North Carolina 41-24 over Pittsburgh. Oklahoma, quietly. We've got to give a shout-out to Oklahoma. Nobody's talking about them. They still got Dylan Gabriel. I know you know him well.
Mm-hmm.
He's playing well. Brett Venables bringing defense out there. Oklahoma hasn't played defense. Last time Oklahoma played defense, they were in Tallahassee. And I think it was 2011. That's the last time they played defense. They're playing defense now. 20-6 on the road at Cincinnati. They're 4-0. Texas got a big one coming up there. Red River, I think, October 7th. That's going to be a big one. Washington State, 38-35. That was a really good game against Oregon State.
Yep.
That's Pac-12 stuff. That's going to be nip and tuck the whole way. They get it done. They go to 4-0. Oregon State goes to 3-1. We'll get into this later. I don't know if any Pac-12 team comes out with less than a loss. Probably most are going to have two.
Right.
That's going to be the first one in Oregon State. DJ Ugalele catches the L there. That was in Pullman. Tough place to play. And the last one before I'll try to get your comments on these ones we're breezing through here. Bama 24, Ole Miss 10. Bama settled on Milroe. Milroe looked pretty decent. He's not going to pick you apart as a pocket passer, but he's a phenomenal athlete with a big arm. Bama settles on him. Defense comes in and really puts a smackdown on Ole Miss. Bama looked nice bounce back game for them. I know they've already got the loss. Texas came in there and kind of manhandled them. But Bama played pretty well, I thought, on Saturday, 24-10. That first window of games, anything stick out? Any of those teams that we've blown through on that back half of that top 25 you see as a contender?
Now, is that just the early games you covered, or did you cover all the game?
No. That's the back half of the top 25 in action.
Okay. Yeah. I think there's a lot in there. I think Washington State, just to start the back, I think that's one of the more dangerous teams in the Pac-12 that nobody talks about. I think everyone talks about SC, USC, and obviously Oregon and even Washington, but I don't think they're a team that's brought up. So be careful. Don't be surprised if that team goes in there and upsets some top tier teams like Oregon and Utah or even Washington that they pull that off, because I've watched that team a lot. I've studied them. They're very good. They're very talented. They're very hard to prepare for. I was pretty impressed with what I saw from Alabama. I did watch that whole game. I was chatting with Rico while I was watching it, and I was studying just the stuff. And I kind of told him throughout the game, like, they're just a much different team when Milfro plays. It's like, yeah, you're limited to passing, but for Alabama to be successful, you have to have a dynamic athlete back there at quarterback. I mean, they just, unless the guy is so special, like Bryce Young type, you got to have a guy that can certainly make an impact and play. And it certainly changed their offense. Yeah, it was sloppy and messy at times, but I think they really grew a lot from that game. So I was pretty impressed with them. I think all the others, I think you nailed on them. I don't think there's anything else but I'd say those two things kind of jumped out to me from the back end.
Well, I'll ask you to give some comments on Miami and Florida. I mean, obviously Florida sleepwalks 22-7 and Miami 41-7. Miami was dominant. That game was over as soon as they stepped on the field. Any concerns with the direction of either one of those? I feel like Miami's maybe a little better than people realize, but we can't really gauge it because the competition, aside from the A&M game, they played well in the A&M game.
Right.
But aside from that, I mean, gosh, it's not much to see there. And Florida's playing Charlotte week 4. I mean,
it's hard to decipher, but I would say there's a lot more confidence in what Miami's doing is from a coaching standpoint, and then two, from a performance standpoint. We only have the Texas A&M to go on. Obviously, they got down in that game 17-7. They responded. Obviously, Jimbo and them did some mistakes, but Miami, that's what good teams do. They capitalize on it. That's what Miami did. So what we have, it's a much more confident team. There's a few more playmakers than I think they've had, previously what they do. But I think the key for Miami is, when they start playing North Carolina and Clemson, where these teams are going to physically beat you up, or attack you vertically that they haven't been attacked before. So I think we'll know kind of the gauge of what level, how good. Do I think their rankings fair? Yeah, I do. I think they should be in there. You beat a Texas A&M team that was ranked at that time, so I think it's certainly earned. I think we won't know how good they are. I think they're still in a learning curve. I still think there's a big question mark with their defensive line. There's not a lot of size on that line, so I think when you play teams that like to run or certainly attack that line, there's going to be a lot more adjustments throughout it. So that will be a challenge Miami has to deal with. But overall, I think they've been really good. I'm really impressed. They've done some nice things, but again, we're going by small sample. We got to see them play the competition, and they got Louisville, they got North Carolina, they got Clemson, they got Florida State late in the year, where they'll really get a benchmark, kind of see what their team at. I think the biggest concern though in-state school is Florida. I mean, I know a lot of Florida fans, and I talked to them after the game. They were really ticked off with what they saw against Charlotte, 22-7.
Wasn't good. Wasn't
No,
good.
it was bad. I mean, and it's just there's a lot of inconsistencies of what they do, as a program. And I can tell you this: I mean, Florida fans do not take lightly to playing teams that they're much better than and just winning 22-7. That game
Yeah.
was like 16-7 late in the third quarter. I'm like, that's not acceptable at Florida. And I think there's some coaching and flow type of situations of what they're doing, whether it's the offensive identity or just what they're whether they want to run or they want to pass. I mean, it just doesn't seem a clear identity of what they want to do, and they're still having issues on special teams. So that stuff they're going to get cleaned up, and they got a tough Kentucky team they're going to play on the road on Saturday. That's going to be a tough
Huge
place.
game.
That's going to be a tough lose, and they lose
Huge.
that game. If somehow they lose, I think there's going to be some chatter in there like, hey, what's going on? And there's going to be a lot of
Yeah.
people wanting answers of what's going on. So I think out of all the in-state schools, Florida's kind of the one that I think offers the most questions.
Well, and I'll piggyback on to what you just said there. I mean, Florida lost to a team we're going to talk about here in this next little segment, Utah, who is just damn good. I call Utah the Michigan in the Northwest because they are damn good. So that's not to shame Florida. I mean, that's a tough place to play. Anybody who goes out there to Utah, they normally come back with an L. So Florida starts the season there. Smirt's first game. They don't look good. Utah's down like 8 starters, and their starting quarterback still goes out there and kind of takes Florida to the woodshed a little bit. But Florida has not lost a SEC East game yet.
Yep.
Okay. And so they get a huge win against Tennessee. That's a big win. Man, that was a great atmosphere. Florida had that place rocking. The Swamp is top 5 tough place to play in all football. I don't give a damn what anybody says. That place is intimidating. And they go out there and they put that Swamp on Tennessee. They got the win. But this game coming up Saturday is going to be in Lexington. It's a big one because if you look at it, it's kind of like a gatekeeper game. If they get this one, these are 2 teams going into the year that were looked at as maybe possibly able to beat Florida and really put them behind the 8 ball. Florida gets this one. Now they look pretty strong in SEC East competition. And now they're going to get their shot at Georgia. Georgia is not the same Georgia as they were the last 2 years, in my opinion. I think they're beatable. And the Gators actually have something where they can really kind of power up and get ready for that big one in Jacksonville, in a month or so. And so that's a big game for them. That's a huge one. Now, on the flip side, if you lose that, now you start wondering, okay, are we going to be able to compete against Georgia? We still have LSU. We still have FSU. We still have an Ole Miss team that's 4-0. Excuse me, a Missouri team that's 4-0. So it starts to get a little dark there. So this is a huge game for the Gators. I'm really going to be tuned in there. I just want to see what they got. I want to see what they do there on the road environment. And, that's going to be a big one. We look at the SEC, a game that I know you watched and you enjoyed. LSU 34, Arkansas 31. That was a barn burner. LSU makes enough plays to win it. They get that one done. And another one I know you watched was Utah UCLA 14-7. Dante Moore played pretty well, had 1 pick, but it was a pick 6. Utah. Nobody talks about Utah. Nobody talks about Coach Whittingham out there in Utah. They're the one team out there in the pack that they D up, man. They play D. Like, don't get it confused. The Rose Bowl where, what's his face for Ohio State had 1 billion yards. I mean, they were down every DB they have. The standard at Utah is playing damn defense, and they do it. They hold UCLA, who can score, who's talented, to 7 points out there. They get a 14-7 win. LSU 34, 31. That's the number 12 and the number 11 team in the country, respectively. Not necessarily on the outside looking in, could play their way into it, especially Utah at 4-0. Thoughts on LSU and Utah?
Yeah, I mean, it's great LSU won the game. That's exciting. I thought they played very subpar, made a lot of defensive mistakes that they haven't done. The previous week, they shut down Mississippi State. I was
Yeah, they look
extremely
good.
impressed, but they've got to stop giving up so many big plays. And I think that's the stuff they got to work on. But overall, big win. Wins win in the SEC or any league, especially Arkansas. It's a talented team that can score, but I thought they could have been better. So I think there's some issues that they need to work on the back end. DB's been their weakness. We knew that coming in when FSU played them. And so I think they have to kind of continue to kind of work some stuff out to kind of fix that and, clean that up as far as, what their back end's doing. And then trying to think of the other game, UCLA and Utah. I love
Yeah.
Utah. I told Rico that when we watched the game together when they played Florida. I'm like, I told him, it's like, they're really hard here, and I feel good about Utah's chances because the thing with Utah, it makes them good. In Washington, it's kind of got the same thing as they have really good edge rushers and they just come at you in waves. They really get after the quarterback. They're really good at pressure, and they're really good slowing down the run. That's why they dominated UCLA as far as on the defense side of the ball. And so they're going to be really tough. I think a game I'm very intrigued with is Washington State plays against Utah this weekend. So that's going to be a barn burner because if they shut
Yep.
down Washington State, you got to start taking notice like, hey, these guys are for real.
Well, take a look at this stat real quick into Utah. I know we don't break down the stats on everybody, but Utah, I think, is a team that the nation really needs to pay attention to because of what they do. They decided to go with Nate Johnson at quarterback. In the Florida game, they were flip-flopping. They were flip-flopping in the subsequent game after that. They settled on Nate Johnson. He ended up going 9-17, buck 17 in the air and a TD. Not super impressive stats, but what they did do is sit on the ball 34 minutes
Yep.
to 25 minutes. They only gave up 9 yards rushing to UCLA. Now, for those who don't know, the Seattle Seahawks have a running back by the name of Zach Charbonnet, who came from UCLA by way of Michigan. But he came from UCLA where he was one of the best running backs in the nation. So UCLA runs the ball. They can run the ball. They didn't run the ball on Utah on Saturday. They only had 9 yards, 0.3 yards a carry. This team can freaking D up, and they can get with you in the paint. They can play big boy ball. I call them the Michigan and Northwest country. Better be prepared for Utah because they've got a running quarterback. They can take the air out of the ball, and they can stop you from doing what the hell you want to do. So Utah is going to be a problem. Now we're going to talk about a game that had all the attention, and I hope everybody stuck with us. We're at the 22-minute mark. Coach Prime, you got to call him Coach Prime or he'll literally hang up on you or he won't take your question. Coach Prime told us that he was coming, and then he said that we didn't believe after the first couple of weeks. I thought the TCU win was a good win. Spade to spade, I thought it was a good win. Nebraska is not good. And Colorado State, frankly, beat their ass for about how long is a football game? I mean, 60 minutes. I mean, we're talking about 55 minutes of that game was Colorado State kind of whooping their ass, and then Colorado made plays in the end, didn't like some of the calls. And so here we go. So now it all culminates. Colorado's 3-0. They are the most watched, talked about team in college football. They have earned that 3-0 record, and then a lot has been given to them as well. We go into this game against Oregon. Coaches had a little bit to say beforehand. Coach Dan Lanning, love him. He's a Knoll, and he did not pull any punches in the pregame speech. He said this game is not about, glamour and glitz. He said this was going to be something where they're fighting for clicks, we're fighting for wins. This game ain't played in Hollywood, it's played on grass. And Oregon came out there with some malintent in their heart, and it showed. This was not close. This was a shellacking. This was a barn burn. This was a boat race. This was varsity versus JV in every sense of the word. I thought this was going to be a butt kick, and I'll be honest, I thought this was going to be a butt kicking. I think there is just levels to this. I think in college football, you cannot skip steps. You cannot just throw talent in there. You cannot just put chains and music together and all of it, and it just comes together like that. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean that in respect to college football, because a lot of programs try to do a lot of things, and it's so damn hard to win. A lot of coaches out there do a lot of things to try to put rosters together and to give their teams an edge. There's a lot of black coaches who are coaching in football. There's a lot of rosters that have a lot of black players that come from the same circumstances that the kids from Colorado come from. If we're just going to put it blood raw, quite frank like that, I think that a lot of people thinking that it's just going to get thrown together in a year and that Colorado's just going to be this fad and everybody's going to bow down and they're just going to play their role so ESPN can get the content. That freaking is not the case. And the Oregon Ducks went out there and put an ass whooping on the Colorado Buffaloes. And I can't say that I hated to see it.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this game coming up because we knew, this was the first test. It's like, okay, you've done all these things. You've beaten the team at TCU that lost all their players. Whatever. You still went on the road. I will take any respect from, Deion Sanders and what they did and what his team did. That is a phenomenal win to start the season, to start his career. Then beat a Nebraska team that is just loses constantly. That's the only thing they've done is lose. And then they kind of face some adversity. I think this kind of set the tone for what we were going to see this weekend, where they were favored by 30 points to beat Colorado State. Colorado State said, screw that crap. We ain't here for your rap party. We're here to win. Went in there, damn near upset them in their own house when they're 30-point dogs. So I think that kind of set the tone. And then you could kind of tell before that game when they were coming out, Shadur's doing his usual thing where he's showing his watch, saying, hey, I'm here. We're going to be ready. Deion did his pregame with Fox before the game, said, hey, we're ready. I'm very confident. And then Oregon went out there and said, they came on the field and they said, shades on. What's up? We're here. That's what they said.
I never got the feeling. I'll be honest. I think, and I get it. I get Coach Prime has to, first of all, I know and and people who know football know. Not guys who are jumping on this bandwagon because it's the new fad and all that. Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, is a winner, and he's won everywhere he's gone as a player. He's won as a coach. He is one of the GOATs of the sport, period. Okay? I don't give a shit. You're not going to throw together a bunch of talent in 1 year, put Lil Wayne with a damn microphone in front of it, and it's just going to win against real competition. It ain't happening. If you want to get behind it and think it's going to happen, you're going to be real upset on Saturdays when real competition comes. It don't work that way. It's going to take Coach Prime some time. Okay, when we look at these stats, and it bothers me because I see a lot of people talking about Colorado in the playoff. I mean, let's just be realistic. They are an extremely improved team. They're a one-win team last year. They've got 3 already. That's terrific. I think Coach Prime's done a great job. I think that he's got a very solid staff there that doesn't get credit. People don't even know the coordinators' names because none of it matters. But they have made some big strides in improvement. But to sit there and actually think that they were going to go into Eugene, into Outson, and even compete, I think was actually ludicrous. And I don't even think Colorado thought that. I think you got to say certain things to try to hype the game up. ESPN, I'm going to say this, ESPN, you're fooling a lot of people. Fox News, you're fooling a lot of people and pretending to support this program because you're giving false hope and you're making it seem like this team is ready and they're there. This team has a quarterback who can spin the hell out the ball, and Shedeur Sanders, very talented, and they have some damn good receivers. Weaver, Horn, Hunter, speedy recovery to Hunter. They have some great receivers. Dylan can run the heck out of the ball. He's a very special athlete, and they've got a couple guys on defense. Shedeur comes up, makes some hits, or not Shedeur, Shiloh. They are nowhere near where they need to be to compete as a roster, and I'm just going to be frank. And if you look at this and you think that's hating, it's not. I love Deion Sanders. I've met him, talked to him. He's been great to me. I have nothing against him. But I do have a problem with the way they have leaped and just hurled all this respect and this expectation onto Colorado in 1 year. And all these programs have just busted their ass for years to try to get to the point where they can compete. And these people really think you're just going to throw some music, some chains, and some watches, which I have a problem with because a lot of these kids come from places where they're working their ass off. So one day they can afford a nice living, damn a watch. And we got kids that have never wanted for anything flash and watching from. I got a problem with that. Not going to go off on a tangent about that. But damn the watch. I don't need to see your watch. Show me in the 60 minutes against real competition what you can do. And the Oregon Ducks sacked his butt 7 times, and it's not Shador's fault. It's because there's not an offensive line that can protect him there because they're weak on both sides of the line. A lot of those transfers were guys who didn't pan out at the previous location for a reason. So I knew when Deion was taking these guys that he was going to have to take guys to fill in for the time being. Colorado's going to get better. They're going to get better. But these people that think they're there now, it kind of pisses me off because it's like you guys are literally disrespecting college football. You think that it happens in 1 year? You think that you put a rapper up there and it just happens? You think just because ESPN gives you some false support to drive up ratings so they make money that you're there? Come on now. I mean, that's ludicrous. So watch all these programs bust their ass for 5, 10, 15 years to get back. Florida ain't won nothing since Tebow left. I mean, damn. I mean, the Florida Gators don't have the logistics. They don't have the swamp. They don't have all these recruits. They don't have all this stuff. You don't think they've tried all this? And you think that this program's just going to throw Little Wayne in front of it and all of a sudden we got to all get behind it and just have these crazy expectations? No, pipe it down. I'm glad Oregon came in there and smacked the hell out of them because then maybe people can get back to realization of what it really is in college football. It's hard. It's a grind. It's all about the offseason. It's all about your weightlifting program, which clearly is deficient at Colorado because they're getting pushed around and Shador's on his back damn near about to get hurt the whole game. I'm watching this kid. I think I'm watching a UFC fight. They're slinging him, hurling him, whacking him, landing on him. I mean, Jesus Christ. Offensive line, are you going to block for this guy? This ain't TCU stripped of all their players from last year. This ain't Nebraska who's fallen into the hype. This isn't Colorado State who's just outmanned. This is a real Division I contending team out of the Pac-12. They've been there. They've done that. And they're hammering your quarterback. Stand up. They can't because they don't have enough weapons yet. They don't have the logistics yet. And ESPN and Fox News lied to us, and they've been trying to hype this up, and they have set Coach Prime up, and they have set this program up to have a bunch of people saying, I told you so. We knew this from the jump. That's what pisses me off. I'm not out here sitting here hoping that Colorado just gets beat every time because Coach Prime is like this nemesis. No, I think that guy's wonderful. I think what that guy's doing for the sport is part of what's making the season so special. But I am absolutely pissed off at the level of disrespect that all this hype on Colorado has been shown to college football as a whole. It bothers me.
Yeah, and it should. I mean, everything you said was exactly how I feel, and I've shared my views several times, and I said this to Rico before the season started. Like, you can throw all this glitter and glam and all this stuff you're doing with the watches and all this stuff, and Dion being charismatic and all this stuff, but eventually, you have to coach them. You have to develop them. You have to play against these Oregons. You have to play against the Utahs. You have to play against the USCs. You have to play against these guys. And I said this, I would give them respect once they play these teams. If you show out and you compete, I will give you your love. I was not surprised at all. I see no comp. This is not even, it was like middle school and high school when I was watching. Like, that's how the comparison was.
Bad. Bad.
Just completely just eviscerating this team. And then, and then my problem too is how the narrative changes. First, it's y'all believe now, or we're coming, or now it's like, well, wait till we get. You better get me now. Like, that's, to me, you can't sit there and give a coach respect to Dan Lanning, Dion, and then come back later and say you better get me now. That looks childish. And Dion's
Yeah,
better than that. Dion's a worker. He's the hardest worker I've ever heard as
absolutely.
far as a practice player. He's better than
Absolutely.
that. Dion, you can do better than that. You're better than that, man. Be yourself. Be your charismatic self. And I've said this from the start. There is not a better motivational person in coaching than Deion
Mm-mm.
Sanders. The guy
Nope.
is phenomenal. I will give him his flowers. I'll give him all his love. But this stuff he's doing each week and getting in
Yeah.
barbs and stuff like that is hurting his team, because what's happening is, and he saw that this week, he's putting more pressure on his kids when they play these teams. It's going to be their Super Bowl every time you play. I could see the fire in Dan Lanning's eyes, the way he was coaching, the way his
Oh
emotion was.
man.
Like, he was ready to literally tear your kids
Yeah.
apart. Like, he was not messing
Yeah.
around. And guess what? It's going to be the same thing when you play Lincoln Riley next week. Every game you play, Dion, because of the way you guys have come across without earning it, you haven't earned a damn thing what you've done. You've improved them. Great. That's awesome. That's awesome. You built the belief around Colorado. They need something good. I'm excited for that city. that football program, but at the same time, you got to act like you have to get somewhere and grow and climb, as
Yeah.
Mike Norvell said. You have to grow. You don't just get to appear and say, "Hey,
Mhm.
we're here. Here's Little Wayne. Here's all these rappers. We're just here. So believe in us. Be excited about
Yeah.
us." But disrespect all the teams that have worked their tails off to get to this point. Because Dion always says, like, don't let your insecurities affect my confidence. Well, it goes both
Yeah.
ways when it comes to respect, Dion. Like, you got to
Yeah.
respect the other team. Don't let your insecurities affect what they've done. So
Yeah.
it just goes both ways. And to me, I'm not against Dion. I'm intrigued every time they play Saturday. I want to see what they
Mhm.
do, but I think you have to lead your kids the right way. You have to do it
Mhm.
the right way. Teach them, lessons from everything you learned from each game. I'm not gonna hate on them because y'all got your butt kicked. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
nothing I didn't expect, but just learn from it. And this man was taught by the greatest defensive coordinator I've ever been around in Mickey Andrews in college. Take his principles of what he taught you and roll with that stuff. I mean, I think if he did that for the most part, he will be good. But if this stuff just keeps continuing with Flair, it's not going to work out. He's like, oh, we're going to be better. Well, Dion, we don't even know if you're going to be there 2 years later. So
Yeah,
just see it.
I want to chime in on something too, because now we're going in here, and I mean, this is all good content, and this is a good conversation. I'm glad we're able to share it too. I changed my hats, and I put on my Knoll hat because that's where I played, that's where I walked on, that's the family that I'm a part of, that's a family that Dion's a part of. Whether he wants to admit it or not, or claim it or whatever, he's a legend. We all look up to him, and we love him at Florida State because he's a damn legend, and he paved the way for a lot of things. But I will say this: I get offended as a black man of mixed race that I'm supposed to support this program in Colorado because they have a black coach that is doing it in a certain manner that I'm supposed to be intrigued by. I get offended by that, and I know that I don't speak for just myself, because at Florida State, we also have a lot of great black men, white men, whatever, but there's a lot of great black men who've come through there. Coach Odell Higgins has been there for years. He's one of the greatest black coaches that I've ever seen. And I don't understand why there's supposed to be this monopoly of support just because one guy's got chains, goddamn glasses, and a hat on while he's doing his interviews. That's what he chooses to do. I'm not going to judge him, but that don't mean I have to follow that. That doesn't mean that I got to root for that, because there's a whole bunch of people that put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in Tallahassee, Florida for a program that look just like he does. They just don't do it the way he does it. And I take offense to that there's this notion that everybody's got to get behind this and support this. It reminds me of politics. And if you know anything about politics, you know that monopoly is real, and that monopoly of thought. And that's the issue that I think not only myself, but a lot of other people are going to have with Colorado. I'm not a Colorado Buffalo fan. Am I intrigued to watch him? Absolutely, because it's entertaining and it's cool to see him make the program respectable. I like that. Am I going to sit here and root for him? No. Do I have to? No. Does anybody have to? No, because they root and they support programs that are part of them. And I just don't think that it's fair. And you can tell by Fox, you can tell by ESPN, you can tell by Shay and all these guys. It's Stephen A. Smith. It's all, even Feinbaum. Everybody's Colorado. I've never seen anything like this. Never seen it. Well, you never seen anything like Oregon blowing their doors off in the first quarter. Okay, first half's 35-0. The score of that game would have been 75-0 if they would have kept the ones and twos in. Okay, and that's reality. And that's what people who know football, played a little bit, been around a little bit, coached a little bit, that are plugged in, that's what they know. And it's just disrespectful to the sport that there's supposed to be this monopoly of support for one program just because you're trying to play off the racial side of it. I have a problem with that. I don't like that. And having played and been a participant in a program that has a lot of kids that don't come from exactly a wealthy, spoon-fed background like a Hall of Famers kids would come from, if we want to throw that out there, since we're flashing watches in people's faces. I play with a lot of kids who had never seen enough money to ever even have a watch like that. And they're busting their ass in a program so that maybe one day they can have a Casio, not a damn $40,000 watch. And I take offense to that because those kids look just like Shedeur. They look just like Dion. And they don't count because they don't roll and do it this way. That's bullshit. And I'll say that right here on this content. That is bullshit. And I think that's why people get piped up, because Oregon has a lot of kids who come from nothing. They just happen to not play for Colorado. And so we're all supposed to rally our support around this because that's what society or sports society is telling us to support. Absolutely not. It don't work like that. If Colorado wants respect from real college football folks, that they're going to have to earn it the same way every other program earns it, period. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the end of the story. And Coach Prime is doing a great job getting them up off the floor because he came there. There was nothing there. He brought a bunch of stuff. But a lot of people who are really down with college football, lifers, been doing this, are not just going to jump on this bandwagon just because they're told to.
No, and it's and the thing that irritates me is when people tell me I should root for Colorado because one, he's a Knoll, and two, just because this has never been done because he's a different personality. I'm like, I'm not going to disrespect the people that have put the work in the workplaces for 15 years. I've been covering recruiting for 23 years. I'm not going to disrespect. You're going to have to earn your way just like anybody else. Like, I
Yep.
don't want to hear excuses. Earn your way. You're going to have to earn it. And I've said this many times, like Dion has got such charisma and swagger about him, but sometimes he lets that swagger go too far, in my opinion, where he doesn't understand there's a response to everything you do. Like when you do
Yes.
stuff, the way you act, it's going to have a response to the person. It's not about their insecurities. It's about them being a man and standing up for what they feel is right. So they're going to stand up. Lincoln Riley's going to stand up next week. You play Utah, they're going to do the same thing. When you do this, one, you put more pressure on your kids. Two, people are going to get defensive. And I get it. It's the wave around the country. Everyone wants to root for Colorado. It's exciting. It's new. It's something that people haven't seen in a while. But at the same time, don't run away when it's not working. It reminds me a lot of the following when I saw with fans when it comes to LeBron James. Like LeBron would jump from team to team. Like Dion went to Jackson State. All you guys are Jackson State fans. Dion went to Colorado. Now you guys are all
Right.
Colorado fans. Dion could go to Auburn or Texas A&M. You're Auburn, Texas A&M fans. So it's the same thing where like pick an institution of what you support and go with it. I never support one person of where they go. I don't support just the person that's there. I support the program and what
Yeah.
is built within there.
Yeah.
So I think that's the problem with a lot of people out there that you know they've been waiting for this day. And I told you what the response would be. It'll be like, well,
Absolutely.
you guys are just hating because Dion finally lost. Y'all got what y'all wanted. Y'all just hating. Like, no, we've said this before the season started. You need to learn how to deal with how there's work that goes into this stuff. There's levels to this stuff of what level you have to go through. Everyone has to go through steps. You don't just get to skip everything and be at the front of the line every time. You have to work for it. And hell,
Yep.
if Dion does that, I will give him all the respect in the world. But I think he's going well beyond that stuff. He's saying hypocritical things like, "Oh, I give this team respect," but then saying, "Well, you better get me now." I mean, to me, that's kind of an excuse of losing.
Right. Right. And to go with that, I mean, you've covered recruiting for 23 years, going on 24, 25. I mean, Coach Prime's going to have a lot of players come play for him. He is a polarizing guy. He is very attractive, particularly if you're a certain type of recruit who really feels like they'd flourish in that type of environment where everything's kind of flashy, do your dance, all that kind of deal. I mean, hey, there's some elite players who would love to play in that. And he's going to get some good guys. He's going to get more good guys. But the statement, "You better get me now," I would ask Coach Prime if I were to talk to him about that statement. I would say, what do you think all these other programs are going to do? You think they're going to stop recruiting? Do you think we're just going to lay down and just when they play Colorado, Colorado's in town, they're going to be good. Just that's it. No, they're going to recruit. They're going to develop. They're going to have strength. They're going to put your emblem up there if you get good enough, and they're going to motivate themselves off what you're doing. You're already motivating them. I guarantee I'm looking at the schedule. USC coming into Boulder on Saturday. That's going to be a smacking. I'm just going to say it. It's going to be a smacking. No excuses. No come get them next year. No, none of that. It's going to be a smacking. Said you're here. It's going to be a smacking. Then we're going at Arizona State. They just played USC tough. That's a dogfight. Stanford, you're going to whoop Stanford because you got more than Stanford. Then you got a bye week at UCLA. That's going to be a dogfight at best. Oregon State, they're coming into Boulder. That's probably a smacking. Arizona at home, you're going to beat them because they don't have that much. You got more. At Washington State, smacking. At Utah, smacking. So when you go and it becomes a 6-6 season, with all the hype when it was 3-0, wall-to-wall coverage, when it's 6-6, I don't want to hear about how next year it's going to be different or how a couple years down the line. No, stand on it. Because if you would have came into the initial campaign saying, you know what, we're going to bring some excitement. We're going to try to turn this thing around. We're going to try to get as many wins as possible. We're going to come in here. We're going to work our butts off. And we're going to do this. No, it was flash, dash, we're coming. We're here, all this. Do you believe now? We believe what we saw on Saturday because a lot of people thought that way coming into it. They didn't want to be haters and be assholes and just down the program because they wanted to give Coach Prime a chance to come in there and see what he could do. And he went in, they went 3-0. But when you start berating people about do you believe, which is what you did, and then you come out there and Oregon calls the dogs off in the third quarter of what should have been a 75-0 smacking, okay? People are going to believe what they see. And I was at the sports bar with several people watching that, and people were just shaking their heads because a lot of people knew it was going to look like that. But they were told by Fox, by ESPN, and by all the pundits, Colorado's here. It's the greatest phenomenon you've ever seen. Oh, my God, everybody got to root for this. And it, in my opinion, has disrespected college football. Like that shit's just that easy. You could just waltz in there, get a bigger-than-life figure, and then it just happens. And another thing I'll say before we get done talking about this, I personally do not like when a coach becomes bigger than a program. I don't like it because it's supposed to be about those kids. It's supposed to be about the university. It's supposed to be about the school. And while Coach Prime does a lot of motivational stuff, I'm sure he does a lot for these kids. There's a lot of guys on his starting lineups that he doesn't know their name. And he makes a lot of the stuff about him. And then he makes comments about, well, people just want to beat me. Yes, because you come in there and you make it about you. Okay? And there's going to be people who take offense to that. I'm a guy that's just talking, but there's guys who actually coach other teams. They're going to get pissed off because nobody even knows your coordinators' names. We know their names because I know Charles Kelly. He's a great man. He's a great coach. And I wish that he got some respect in damn Boulder, Colorado, because he's a damn great person, great coach, and nobody freaking talks about him because his name ain't Prime. People are going to have a problem with that. And some of the people that are going to have a problem with that are on your schedule. Just going to leave it at that.
And two, it's just the coaching in general. When you go through this stuff, it's like, I think he did a 60-minute special. Hey, do all the things you can do. Do what you got to do. You want to do that. That's fine. And the lady's asking him if you're the greatest coach in college football. And he's like, yeah, I believe I am. And it's like, that's disrespectful. Dude, you haven't done anything. Like anything. All these people tell me, oh, Deion's going to turn it around. He's done this. I think Deion can do it. But let's be real. You want facts? Here's facts. When he coached at Jackson State, when he got into a championship game, he lost both times. Both times against lesser talent. That's coaching. You got to go in there. Okay, Colorado, that's great. You won 3 games, but you're changing the program. That's great. But there's a process to this, guys. You have to show your merit. Nick Saban didn't come in there and just everyone give him the GOAT tag because he was just charismatic or something. He had to go in there and win. Won championships at LSU, coached at the NFL with Miami Dolphins, then won 6 more titles at Alabama. Like your proof, Dabo won 3 championships. FSU won some championship. Jimbo won a championship. Like you have to have proof to facts to back up what you're doing. Do I think Deion can do it? Yeah, I do because of the guy that taught him was Mickey Andrews, and Mickey's one of the best guys I've ever been around. But he has to fall into those teachings of what they are. I know Deion says he don't care what I think or anybody else thinks. That's cool. I don't really care what he thinks about that. I don't care. Here's the point. Your merits are your merits, whatever you are. Bobby Bowden is what he is because of his coaching, what he did for people, what he made out of the players that were there. Wasn't just football. Those kids generally love him. They were his dad. He was their dad basically. With a lot of these kids, they have dads. So you need to be changing lives, and that ticks me off when it's all about just excitement and not developing these young men because this is your chance. Whether they continue in the NFL football or something else, they need to have you molding them as people and men. Being whether it's successful in a business or you're playing the NFL, whatever. That's where you come in as a head coach, and even more so and this is just facts. for all the Dion people, it's like when he wins and when he shows the product on winning as a great coach, I will give him respect. But he's cutting in line like saying, I'm the greatest. And I get it, Dion. You're confident. You always think you're the best player. You've said that. I get that. But that's playing, Dion. That's not coaching. Coaching is a different
Hmm.
profession, and you
Yep.
have to earn it. You have to earn your credits. You're at Jackson State, you didn't win a title. Now you're at Colorado, you have a chance to win a Big 12 title when you go to that league. So when you do that or you start winning, I will
Yep.
give you the respect. Just like I told Rico from the start about Norton Norvell. I will give you your respect when you start doing the stuff that is the expectation of the standard at FSU. Same thing with Miami and their program. Same thing with Florida. It doesn't matter what program. I'm very consistent about I will give you your respect and the glory you deserve of what your merits are. That's the problem that I think a lot of people they don't care about what the merits are with Dion. They're just like, it's game changing,
Yeah.
exciting. I want it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think we've covered that in its entirety. And again, people may hear that and be, "Oh, you're hating on Colorado." No, I'm not hating on anybody. I'm trying to stand up for the respect and the sanctity of college
Yeah,
football because it is damn hard to win in college football. And anybody thinks you're just going to slap some guys together, match them up with uniforms, put some swag on, and throw some features in front of a home game. I mean, just I don't even know where to start with that. I mean, you obviously don't know anything about college football if that's what you think.
yeah,
Moving on, we've covered that at length. We've got some great ball games here to cover. Washington. Well, this is not a great ball game. This is Washington, another team out of the Pac-12 that, fortunately for Colorado's sake, is not on Colorado's schedule because that would also be another schmacking. They schmacked California 59-32. It was 45-12 at the half. Michael Penix from Tampa, Florida, such a great, phenomenal player. He got injured. He's back. He is a legitimate Heisman guy. He's going to be knocking Shador out of the Heisman rank. Shador, you're off the Heisman list for now, buddy. Michael Penix is going to be on it. They go down there and they get it done. That's a team nobody wants to play out of the Pac-12. They look really good. And then the other team out of the Pac-12 that we've got to talk about is USC. They go out there and they get into a bit of a bar fight with Arizona
yeah.
State, 42-28. Caleb Williams had to be special. He is. I don't like painted nails. I don't like all the crazy, goofy stuff that the guy does, but I don't think that there's anybody close to him in college football. I think he is a runaway Heisman guy at this. From what I saw, and I watched it live,
Mhm.
the plays he makes, the velocity on his throws, his mobility, his comfortability in the pocket. That guy, he's the real deal. And they can beat anybody with that guy there. They get it done 42-28. Just quick thoughts on the Pac-12 frontrunners, which USC's number 5 and Washington's 8 nationally.
Yeah, they're both great teams. I think Washington. I've said I'm not going to back away from what I said. I think they're the team that I would pick to win it all in the Pac-12. I just love their balance they have. They have the defense that you want. They can score on defense. They're one of the nation's leader in scoring defenses. Their offense is ridiculous with Michael Penix, and I think they just have the balance you're looking for overall on both sides of the ball. And then with USC, that's the I'll be honest. That was the first time I had watched them this year. I watched them last night, and I was like, "Holy moly! This team has so many. They have the most explosive athletes I've seen on a team on
They're a
offense in a
blur.
while. I mean, they
Yeah.
are ridiculously good. Caleb's on another level. He's the clear favorite. There's no. I mean, the stuff he does, manipulating the pocket, finding ways to find creases, and then the arm talent to make crazy throws. I mean, he just got a mix. The way the arm level he throws with. Sometimes he'll throw it over. Sometimes sidearm. Sometimes he'll just zip it across the whole field for 45 yards. It's like
Mm-hmm.
the stuff he does is ridiculous. So I think if you haven't watched USC play, definitely tune in that Colorado game. Not just saying it because they're playing Colorado. I'm saying that because they are so fun to watch as far as on offense. Now, there's a lot to be less desired when it comes to their defense. It's definitely going to be a shootout when they play teams that can score too. But from an offensive standpoint, you will love that. So I love both of those teams. I think both of them have a chance to be in there. I think both of them are certainly top 10 teams. I don't. I think Washington for me is more of a threat for the playoff than USC is, just because I don't see that. I think that defense is eventually going to burn USC for a game or two. So
Yeah.
that's kind of my reason. But Washington, I think that team's the real deal when it comes to being a playoff contender. Now it's going to be tough because they have to go through the gauntlet of the Pac-12 and certainly play in that Pac-12 championship. So that's kind of the why I think
Listen,
they're on the.
listen to this. Listen, not to cut you off, but when you're talking about the gauntlet, I want to make sure that everybody understands what we're talking about. They still have a home game against Oregon. They've got at Arizona coming up. They've got a bye week, and then they've got a home game against Oregon. That is must-see TV. But the gauntlet, when you look at their last 4 games, okay, this is the Washington Huskies we're talking about. They are at USC, home against Utah, at Oregon State, home against Washington State. I don't know if there's a quartet of games tougher than that in the whole country, and that's after they play a huge game against Oregon. So, yeah, Washington, man, if they can get through that, holy moly.
Yeah, and I think if they do get through that, yeah, they'll be certainly in the playoff. But Mike, that's why I have them just below the 4 or 5 teams that we'll have in there because of that. Not because I don't think they're good. I think they're good as any team in the country that I've seen. But it's because of the teams they're going to have to play and beat, and to constantly be up every week you play when you're playing top tier teams. That's really hard to maintain that consistency. So I think eventually they'll slip up, but overall, for what I've seen from that team, I think they're as good as anybody that I've seen in the country.
Yep, Washington Huskies are going to be a problem as I'm writing down my top 5 here. We're going to jump ahead. The 2 Big Ten matchups that I want to talk about, we'll finish with. We'll talk about Georgia Bulldogs 49-21. They played UAB. Nothing to see there. Georgia had a pretty tense battle with South Carolina last week. They ended up pulling away. They crushed UAB. Bowers is the best tight end in America. Gino, I agree with you. I don't think there's a close second, and he gets it done. Carson Beck's looked pretty good. 3 TDs, 328. They played UAB. Nothing to see there. I think 35-14, or excuse me, 28-14 at halftime. Game was probably closer than it should have been. They get it done. Michigan, there was a lot of talk this week about some people picking some upsets, actually. Michigan's schedule to start the season, super weak. Self-imposed sanction from the school onto Harbaugh for purchasing cheeseburgers in the NIL era, purchasing cheeseburgers. NCAA, you guys really need to get your head out of your ass. That's absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, their schedule's been soft. First real opponent comes in 3-0. Rutgers has looked good. Greg Schiano coached the Bucks. He's a pretty well-renowned coach. They bring him in there. Third play of the game, they hit a slant. Boom, 70 yards. Rutgers up 7-0. Looking at the game like, okay, that was the only good thing Rutgers would do all day. Michigan pounds them 31-7 and really shuts the door on them. Georgia and Michigan both handle business. They look good at the top spots here. And then Texas, we'll get to the rankings here. I just am very impressed with this Texas team. I feel like they have the deepest defense in the country. They made a huge statement against Alabama. They went in there and smacked Alabama along the lines of scrimmage, the LOS where football's won. They smacked them for 60 minutes, and they went out there and smacked Baylor 38-6 in a game that could have been a letdown game, in a game that's a rivalry game, in a game that you don't come in there focused. It could get fun, and it was not fun for the Baylor Bears. It was 28-6 at halftime. They smacked them. They put another 10 in the third quarter, and that was done. And then lastly, before we get into the Big Ten marquee games, we've talked about it at length. Our Florida State Seminoles finally go up there and they kick down the door, the gatekeeper game. They go through the glass ceiling. They beat Clemson on the road in overtime. It was like pulling teeth. It was very, very nip and tuck. Clemson played phenomenal. Dabo Swinney had them coached up. Their kicker missed a kick, ended up going to overtime. Florida State took care of business overtime, went up top, pulled some of the Christmas decorations out of the attic. Keon Coleman up top in overtime, grabbed that touchdown, and then Knowles got a big stop on fourth down there. So thoughts real quick before we talk about Penn State, Iowa, and the game, Ohio State University of Notre Dame, Georgia, Michigan, Texas, and Florida State. What do you think about those 4 schools?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Georgia, my questions are still there. That their offense, I think the quarterback is a problem. Carson Beck it's still being up and down. Their defense is phenomenal, so that's there. So I don't think we got any questions answered with Georgia. I think we know they're all really good. They're going to be in the top five for just about anybody that picks the top five. So I think certainly they're good, but that quarterback that could be a problem when you start playing the Tennessees and the Floridas and teams that have really good talent. Are you going to be able to open it up enough where this guy can get the job done? So that's them. Michigan, I wasn't really that concerned with them, but I will get into the top five later. They're exactly what I thought they were. The most talented team I've seen, Jim Harbaugh have at Michigan ever, for in my opinion. So certainly a team that we're kind of just waiting for the statement games when they actually play somebody that's really good in the league. Obviously, that's coming up with Penn State, and even I think they play Iowa as well at some point. So I think each week we'll get to see a better test of Michigan, but I kind of feel I know what they are, but I think both of them are top five, certainly teams.
All right. Well, that takes us to the big ones, and a team that's not been getting a lot of respect. People have not been talking about this team. I'm referring to the Penn State Nittany Lions. They absolutely house the Iowa Hawkeyes in a marquee matchup and a nighttime matchup. I think it was a 6:30 kick, 31-0. Okay, 10-0 at halftime. Penn State kicked it into gear. Juilliard didn't really pass for a lot of yards. Iowa plays pretty sound defense. They're very good in their base defense. Drew Alar went 25-37, 166, but did throw 4 TDs. So when they got down there and they worked the ball down the field, Alar was pretty precise. They didn't really run the ball that great, 3.8 yards a carry. Katron Allen led the way with 72 yards. But we got to talk about what they did defensively to Iowa. Now, Iowa's got kind of a sludgy offense, so they're not gonna light up any scoreboards, but Penn State gave up 76 total yards. Okay. And we spent a lot of time talking about the Pac-12 and the hotline offense, talking about Colorado, and talking about the receivers, talking about watches, talking about all that's bullshit. Like when you can line up and you can hold a team to 76 yards because you're smacking them every play and your front seven is firing off the ball, linebackers are filling gaps, DBs are playing close, inside leverage. I love how Penn State DBs play. That's why the poor kid is in Pittsburgh right now playing in the league. Yep. Man, we got to start talking about Penn State. And before the season, it was kind of like, okay, well, Michigan's clearly the best team in the Big Ten, and they probably still are. I'll tell you what, though, Penn State ain't far behind. And if they play defense like that, Ohio State, Michigan better freaking pack a lunch, because Penn State's got to travel to the Horseshoe. But they get Michigan in Happy Valley, and those two games are going to be some big boy matchups. I'm super impressed with this Penn State team. They do not get enough credit. They put up 397 total yards. They only gave up 76. That was a complete ass whooping. 4 turnovers they created. This Penn State defense, they got the term linebacker U for a reason. Micah Parsons came from there for a reason. That's your favorite player. This Penn State team, I think, is for real. I think they're for real.
They are, and to me, they were the most impressive team all weekend. I thought their performance was the most impressive that I saw, from whether forcing turnovers or just the way they dominated, controlled the game. I think that's the team that everyone has to. I think, I talk about statement, and sometimes the statement is, that you go in there, you're playing a ranked team, you make a statement at home, say, yeah, we are that good, and I think that's kind of what Penn State did, and now I think everyone will kind of have a different view of Penn State now for the rest of the year of what they saw.
They better, because this team's for real. This team flies around, and they're super tough, especially in Happy Valley. And that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Man, that is a very impressive win by Penn State. They announced themselves, and I think that they need to get a little bit more recognition. But I'm sure they're quite content with you sleeping on them, because they're going to get their shot at Ohio State, and they're going to get their shot at Michigan, and those games are going to be something else. Now, the biggest game of the week, one of the biggest games of the year so far, it proved to be an old school, just quality football game. I called it a 21-17 Notre Dame victory at the kick. I was wrong. Ended up being Ohio State 17, Notre Dame 14 in South Bend at the buzzer by an inch. The only thing this game was lacking, and Zwarbick, I'm pissed at you. I'm mad because the nation and the college football world deserve to see the blue and gold traditional Notre Dame uniform against the traditional icy white on scarlet and silver Ohio State kit. And we didn't get that because you went booger green, you went throw up green, you went stupid green. The only thing that was wrong with this game was Schwarbick's decision for that uniform. That's the only thing that was wrong with this game. This was beautiful football. This was slobber knocker. This was draft picks all over the place. Guy sticks out. Another guy sticks out for you. It's not Marvin Harrison. Stover, the tight end for Ohio State. That dude's a freaking man. Yeah, I thought the Ohio State quarterback played pretty well. He didn't lose him the game, didn't turn it over. He wasn't terrific. He's not very mobile. Huge throws. I mean, you talk about growing a pair late in the fourth quarter. That drive was incredible. A couple fourth down conversions. And, man, I think the biggest takeaway is Ohio State has been diva ball for a long time. They have a ton of receivers. Every year they got 3 NFL receivers. They've got a big shot quarterback. They score what Ryan Day said, we're going to put 100 on them. Ryan Day always makes these crazy statements. What Ohio State has not been able to do is stick their foot in the tire and get into the paint and go toe-to-toe, where you can't move, you can't run, you can't bounce off the ropes. They haven't been able to stick that foot in the tire, have your opponent stick that foot in the tire, and just trade body blows. This Ohio State team can do that, and they proved that. And I think it's a big statement. That's why I call this whole episode the Ohio and Penn statement, because they went into South Bend and they banged with Notre Dame the whole game. They were winning pretty much the whole game. Notre Dame ended up getting the lead late, but Ohio State proved that they can play big boy ball. They can win big boy ball, and that is a huge statement from the Buckeyes. I was super impressed with them, super impressed with Henderson. I know you like him. Harrison fought through an injury, blocking. I mean, Harrison's busting his ass on a block, gets rolled up, comes back in the game. Huge program win. Very impressed with Ohio State. I think they proved a lot of naysayers and doubters wrong. That's what I've got on Ohio State. The only thing that I got to say negative about Notre Dame, I thought it was a great effort. I think Ohio State has a little more than Notre Dame. I thought the arena, I thought the atmosphere would bode in their favor, and it did, just not enough to put them over the top. But a coach that I really love, and I wish that the nation would talk more about, Coach Marcus Freeman. You cannot have gaffes on the goal line where you've only got 10 kids on the field with the game on the line. And it happened not once, but twice. Ohio State scored that game-winning touchdown. Notre Dame had 10 kids on the field. And I hate that for Coach Freeman. I hate that for Notre Dame. I hate that for the 90,000 that were there. I hate that for the country that had to watch that last play. That should never happen. I think the world of Coach Freeman, that is unacceptable. That should never, ever happen at that stage.
Yeah, it was kind of the sour part in it because it was such a snobberdocker type of game, back and forth. Ohio State took a 10-0 lead. Michigan, or not Michigan, but Notre Dame rallied, got back up 14-10, and then they seemed to have the game. They had a 4th and like 14, and then they went prevent coverage, blitzed everyone, then prevented it, and which never. Only thing prevent does is prevent you from stopping anything. And so they had a gap. They found the zone. McCord made a great pass and got it in there and squeezed it in. I think the big takeaway from this game with them Ohio State winning was, you've saw me mention this, guys. Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State. What do they all have in common? They have hell of defenses. All their defenses are hellish. That's why I consider the Big Ten the best conference, because you're not going to win without defense. Defense is what wins titles. And so when I see these 3 teams, that's what stands out to me as far as defense. Now you got to have the offense to match with it. But my takeaway from this weekend was, after watching all these games and these conferences, and yes, it's exciting what the Pac-12 has done, all the ranked teams, but at the end of the day, like, you got to be able to stop people. And to me, the Big Ten has the most dominating group of guys as far as teams that can do that consistently. And then some of those teams are a little more explosive than others on offense. So I think these teams are going to be a problem. And I think right now, just right now, this could change. But I think they're the best league right now.
Not only do I agree with you, I think it's funny. I said the SEC ain't SEC, and the Big Ten right now, to me, is clearly the best conference in terms of having national contenders. I mean, you have close to 3 top 5 teams. You definitely got 2 top 5 teams, and I'm not sure that Penn State is in the top 5 team. That's 3. The SEC's got 1, and they ain't even been tested yet. They haven't left between the hedges to play anybody worth a lick yet. So we don't know how good Georgia is. We've seen what Texas did. Texas went down there and smacked Alabama. Okay, right. FSU's smacked LSU in a neutral site. Okay, so these teams have already proven what they've done. I don't know how there could be a conference that could really contest with the Big Ten right now. And here's where it gets crazy. Next year, you're adding Washington, Oregon, USC, and UCLA. I'm going to tell you right now, SEC, you better call the Noles and you better call Clemson, because if you don't, you will be looking up to the Big Ten. I said it. What's today's date? September 25th. It's 1 a.m. You will be the second tier, the second best conference in football. If you do not add Florida State and Clemson, get on the horn. The Big Ten is about to do something serious, and don't let them add Notre Dame too. I mean, you're talking about 3/4 of the damn top 10 will be the Big Ten. I mean, you got Oregon at 10, you've got Washington at 8, Penn State at 7, Ohio State at 6, Notre Dame's at 9, USC's at 5, Michigan's at 2. What are we talking about here? You know, this football again. NIL's changed stuff because now kids don't have to go down south to get the, you know what I mean? They don't have to go down south to they can go wherever, right? Because NIL now people can, right? So now everything's changing. So now the Big Ten is beasting. And I love it because for years it was SEC, right? SEC. Everybody else is just second tier, just peasants, right? They ain't peasants no more. And wait until 2024. You just seen what Oregon did. You've been watching what Washington is doing. You see what Penn State just did. You see what Ohio State and Notre Dame just put on a classic. USC. I mean, we're here. The Big Ten is the best league in America right now, and it's going to get even more so. It's going to get even worse in 2024. Going into the final segment, we've been over because we put a lot of heart and soul into the Oregon, Colorado. And you know what? It's only fair. Everybody wants to talk about it, so we talked about it. We gave it to you. But now we're going to finish it up. Top 5. Change my ball cap out because I said I would do so. The best team in America is not my Noles. It's not my Wolverines. It's the Texas Longhorns. I thought it last week. I feel confident in it now. The Texas Longhorns are my number 1 team. I think they got the deepest defense. They got a Heisman contender in Ewers. They've got a receiver in Worthy that can't be stopped. They've got the best offensive line in America. They're running the hell out of the ball. They have proven that they went into Tuscaloosa and they smacked the Standard, which is still Alabama, smacked them for 60 minutes, both sides of the line. I think this Texas team is different. I don't think this Texas team is going to falter where they faltered before. They've got a big one against Oklahoma, who I've got a ton of respect for, and I think is really good. But I think right now, this Texas team is the best team in America. I've got them 1. I supplanted you, Georgia. You haven't played anybody. You definitely haven't played anybody away from the hedges. And I just don't see an overwhelming force in you. I just don't see it. I think Texas is better than Georgia. I will keep Georgia number 2 because I do not think that they've done anything to be dropped any farther than that. I've got Michigan at number 3. I think Michigan is probably still the most complete team in the country. I just have questions on to whether or not they'd be able to handle Texas on both sides of the line. Although Michigan's defense is awesome, I think the only defense better than Michigan's in the country is Texas. Number 4, I've got the Noles, Florida State. Why? Because Florida State has played the toughest schedule to date. They played LSU Tigers when they were ranked top 5 or whatever they were, 5, 6. They played them at a neutral site and absolutely Wally smacked them 45-17. We don't count 24 because that was BS. The threes were in. So Florida State did that. And then they went into Clemson and they won in Death Valley. Nobody's won in Death Valley since when, Mike? 2016?
Yep.
Right? Yeah. Correct. So that's top 4 team. So AP poll, coaches poll, jumping Florida State out of the top 4, you're crazy. What other team has beaten both sets of Tiger? They got 2 Tiger pelts. 1 LSU, 2 Clemson, 2 Tiger pelts. Florida State are the Tiger Kings. Got to be in the top 4. Anything else would be sacrilegious. And then the top 5 spot, I'm going to give it to the Ohio State Buckeyes because that is a hell of a win when they go into Notre Dame into South Bend and they go out there and they do that in the fashion of which they did. This is a diva team. They just throw the ball around, score 60, right? Ryan Day style. Well, I tell you what, that team showed something on Saturday. They got in the paint. They got dirty. That was a bare knuckle brawl, and they came out on top. I removed USC out because USC was in a dogfight with Arizona State, and I thought Arizona State actually had a chance there, but USC's just got the cheetahs. I think USC looks like the Ohio State of old, and I wonder if USC would be able to handle the Ohio State Buckeyes if they were to play, because I think Ohio State can bang in the paint. So that's my top 5. Heisman, I'm going to go. No surprise, Caleb Williams. I don't think that there's a close second. Caleb Williams is an absolute cheat code. He's ridiculous. If I had to put a second place, I would put Quinn Ewers because I think that he's spearheaded that Texas team, and that Texas team is balling right now. I've got Quinn Ewers number 2. Number 3, I've switched it up. I'm going with my man from Tampa, homegrown, Michael Penix Jr. He is absolutely crushing it. Nobody is throwing the ball better than him in the country, although I do think the talent edge would go to Caleb Williams. Michael Penix is killing it, and they will play, and we will get to see that, and that will get to settle. Number 4, I'm going with my man, Jordan Travis at Florida State. I mean, you get 2 Tiger pelts. I think Jordan Travis has still got to be up there. I think for his body of work where he's played, the defenses that he's played against in Clemson and LSU, and still been able to throw game winners in overtime, not turn the ball over in that environment, he deserves to be up there, his body of work. And number 5, I'm just going to go with Drake May because I think Drake May is a phenomenal talent. He's got North Carolina going places they haven't gone before in a long, long time, and they are in a very good position in the ACC. So that is my top 5 Heisman and my top 5 overall. Mike, what say you?
Whew, man. I don't know how I top that. That's hard. That was good stuff. All right. My number 1 team resolves around where my man was born, and that's Michigan. Number 1. They're
Don't
number
hate that.
1. No, number 1, and I'll tell you a lot of reasons why. Yes, I know they haven't played the schedule yet, but I know defensive fronts, I know dominating fronts, and I've seen this. We talk about how good Penn State secondary is, and they're good. This Michigan secondary is one of the best I've seen in a while, in the last 3 or 4 years. I mean, they remind me of that Clemson team that hammered Alabama in the national championship game. The way they play defense, they just attack you. They force turnovers. They're always forcing turnovers. To me, forcing turnovers, and not only do they force turnovers, they stop you. The only way you can score is, and Rico kind of highlighted, like the first play, Rutgers hit a big play. That's how you have to score against Michigan. You're not going to go down there 9 and 10 drives. I just think they're the complete team. I think JJ's got to get his head out of his butt and start throwing it to the right team. And I think, my opinion, they have the most dynamic running back in the country in Blake Corum. I love Blake. I think Blake's the best running back. I think Blake doesn't get hurt last year. He probably wins the Heisman. That's how
100%.
how I think of Blake. I
100%.
just think you got the complete package. You got talented receivers. I think they have everything I look for. And then the other part, why I have them number 1. Yeah, Texas, you're phenomenal, but you ain't been there. Michigan's been there. They know what to do when they're there. So I trust them more in this situation. I think Harbaugh's ready for it. Now, my number 2 team is definitely Texas. I think Texas is right there with Michigan as far as talent. Great balance. Rico nailed it. Offense, defense, they have it all. I love their quarterback, Quinn Ewers. He does everything you want. He looks good. He got Xavier Worthy as a big-time playmaker, and I love their running back, C.J. Baxter. Shout out to my man out of Orlando, Florida. He's doing his thing over there at Texas, and I love that defense they play. I just don't think they force the turnovers the way that Michigan does in an elite level. But I love that team. My number 3 team, I would probably still have Georgia. I'm still going to keep you guys there, but man, you guys are making me lose confidence in you guys every week because I'm seeing a lull on offense with you guys consistently. That's really concerning me. We saw it against South Carolina. You got down 14-3. You had to rally just to come back to beat that team. that's a team they should beat more than handily. So I'm seeing some kind of chinks that I don't like on offense at quarterback that they got to get better and clean up. I love their defense, but you got to clean that up. 4, I'm going to keep FSU there. I think FSU's they've got a top 5 win. They've won in Death Valley. And like I told Rico, if you haven't been to Death Valley and won there, I don't want to hear anything from you. That's a tough place to play. That's a quality statement, gate winning game as far as changing your program. So I keep FSU at 4. My 5th team is not Ohio State, not no, it ain't it's Penn State. Penn State blew me away like when I watched that team. And the other reason I don't have you in there, Ohio State, your quarterback scares the shit out of me. Like that quarterback is like he don't run, he's not athletic, he's late on his throws, and I think it might cause them some problems down the line when they play some top teams like Penn State or Michigan. So that's my concern with it. I love your defense, Ohio State. You guys are really good. I think you could play with anybody, and I think all 5 of these teams you could pick any one of these and switch them around if you wanted to. But those are kind of my top 5. Heisman favorites. That's easy with number 1. It's Caleb. Me and Rico talk about him every week. It's just there's
awesome.
there's not anyone close to
He's
him.
awesome. Yeah.
And my second one, I'm going to go with a surprise, and it's going to surprise a lot of people. Is I'm going to pick Blake Corum because I think Blake is going to be the guy that'll really challenge him. If there's going to be somebody that challenge him, it's going to be Blake, and I think Blake just has to stay healthy. He's got great balance with him and depth that they can take pressure off him, and he has some big games that are coming up. He's got Ohio State, he's got Penn State. I think he has signature moments that are waiting out there, and I think a lot of people are going to look at the Pac-12 like, well, these dudes don't stop anybody. So it's like, how good is Caleb? But I think they know defense is played in the Big Ten, so I think that's going to have voters really thinking what's there and what isn't there. At 3, I would say Quinn Ewers, just like Rico. I love him. I love what he's doing. And winning matters. What you're doing, changing the product of what your team looks like on the field matters. So I'd have him 3. I wouldn't change anything with Jordan Travis at 4. And then I think Jordan has done everything you asked up. He's beat up. He's had big wins. He's had clutch plays. He's done the things that you need him to do to put FSU in the position. And he's just, if FSU can get back to the Jordan of what we saw last year, where cut the Band-Aid off and let him go, watch out. He could make a move up that top 5, but we have to see that. So that's what I'm kind of waiting for with that. And then 5, I picked the same guy I picked before at 4, Marvin Harrison Jr. I just think
That's
this
your
guy,
dude. That's
it's
your
ridiculous.
dude.
Man, if I'm building a team, that's the dude. He reminds me so much of Justin Jefferson when I watch him. He just does so many things. He can beat you inside. He can beat you deep. He's fast. The guy is just a complete package. Best receiver in the country. Not surprising to Ohio State because that's all they do. I don't know how they just factor those guys out every year, but I just think that guy is such a game changer. And I think Ohio State's going to be really good throughout the whole year, that he's going to get some buzz for that award. So I think he could get an invite, but that's kind of my top 5. There you go, guys.
Man, that's good. I like how you mixed it up. I got 5 signal callers in there. You mixed in a running back and a receiver. I like that. It's probably a little more realistic. And this is going to shift as we go, but we'll see. I think winning matters too. I love your point. Blake Corum was 100% going to win that Heisman if he doesn't get hurt in that Illinois game. And that was very, very unfortunate. He led Michigan all year. He was terrific. They had that big Ohio State game. Of course, Donovan Edwards probably still running down the sideline. Buckeyes don't want to hear about that. He could probably find him somewhere over there off of 94, still running with the ball in his hand. But that was supposed to be Blake. And then who knows what would happen if they would have had a healthy running back against TCU. We won't talk about that because it's a sore subject. But anyway, Blake probably deserves to be in there. And I think if Michigan keeps winning, he will definitely be there. Well, guys, that is that's an hour and 24 minutes of content. We went way over. We covered it all. I hope everybody got a good feel for what's going on in the landscape of college football. This is a tremendous season. I'm super excited about it. I can't wait to see what's going to happen next week. The Knowles are off, so it'll be a little less stress going on, but there's still some great games to be played next week. So that's going to be it. That's week 4. Mike and Rico signing off. God bless you. You guys have a great week, and we will see you next time next week.